All right, my lovely ladies, welcome back to the Empowered and Unstoppable podcast, where we go beyond the highlight reels and talk about what it really takes to rise. The moments that break us wide open and the ones that show us who we were always meant to be. Welcome to Empowered and Unstoppable, the show where high achieving women crush self doubt, ditch imposter syndrome, and step boldly into their greatness. I'm your host, Megan Bunnell, and together we'll unlock the mindset, strategies, and confidence you need to create unstoppable success on your terms. Let's dive in. And I'm Megan Bunnell, your host, speaker, success coach, and today, my friends, we have a guest that is truly walked through fire, the kind that reshapes every corner of your identity and somehow emerged more radiant and more grounded and more purpose-driven than ever. And I know that some of you can relate because I know that we all have setbacks. We might have some paralyzing trauma. And so I'm really excited to share not only her story, but her little bit of sass and the purposeful journey that she's been through that has allowed her to rise and truly share with us all of the golden nuggets I know that she has. So there are people who study transformation, and then there's people that live it. She began her career in the medicine with a heart for service, for sure. She was a doctor, fueled by a scholarship that sent her for a care of underserved communities, if you will. So her brilliance, work ethic, and compassion quickly made her one of the most sought after OB-GYNs in her region. And ladies, don't we all love a really good OB-GYN that we feel comfortable with, right? She built a thriving practice, led a medical spa, and became the go-to expert truly for women's health in her area. But life doesn't spare anyone from pain, and not even our healers. So in 2006, everything changed when she faced an unimaginable loss. And she'll talk about that, I'm sure. Grief sent her spiraling into depression and disconnection, as it can to all of us, forcing her to really step away from medicine, give herself time to heal, search for meaning. And that journey took her around the world. I'm hoping a story she'll share as well, not just geographically, but spiritually. And then when she returned, she rebuilt from the ground up, really integrating the wisdom she'd gathered abroad with the rigor of modern medicine that we know here. But even then, another storm was waiting. And years later, she found herself facing burnout and nearly broke, hormonal imbalance, identity loss, ladies, you name it, it was there. The healer became the patient. And it was there in that second crash that she really found her true calling. And I'm so glad that she did, merging science with soul to really help women heal from the inside out. She is a triple board certified, I think is how you say it, OB-GYN, integrative medicine specialist, and an anti-aging expert, ladies. We all need that. But there's more than that. She's a woman who's turned her deepest pain into true purpose. She's a best-selling author, entrepreneur, a fierce advocate of women learning to love and honor and understand our bodies again. I couldn't say enough about her. Obviously, I could talk for days, but I really want to get her on the show. She is known as the girlfriend doctor because she's the one that we all wish was in our corner. It's Dr. Anna Cabeca. Welcome to Empowered and Unstoppable. I am so thrilled to have you here.
Well, it is an honor to be here. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction.
Well, I could talk about you for days, but we're going to get into something a little fun to start, and then we'll get into all of the fabulous golden nuggets I'm sure you have to share. So I start every episode with the same question. We pull back the curtain just a little bit. What is something fun or quirky or just plain human about you that people might not know?
Well, I think probably one of the most quirkiest is that I'm a horse mom. And I love being a horse mom. Like I never anticipated that I'd be, in my 50s, almost 60, and hauling horses and going to rodeos. And I say I drive a Porsche during the week and a big old Ford dually truck, big old dude truck
I
on the
love
weekend.
it. I love it. How fun. And so do you have horses on your property now?
Well, we have horses boarded at a nearby ranch. Yeah.
Got it. I love it. I love it.
But that's my
Well,
goal, Megan. That's my goal. Get that ranch with that pink barn.
Ranch with the pink barn. Everybody cross your fingers for Dr. Anna so that she can get that pink barn. And I'm telling you, I've got to come visit. That sounds amazing. So I know that you have a lot of things that you're going to share with us today. But we're going to start maybe a little bit on the dark side because I think it's really relatable, right? We've all had some sort of setback, some sort of turning point. I know you've had two very obvious ones in your life. But the first one is really something that split your world into, if you will, and that was the loss of your son. And I know that a lot of listeners can relate to that in some way, shape, or form. Can you take us back to that time, the during, the aftermath, not just professionally, but personally, as a mother, as a woman, a healer trying to heal yourself? Can you take us back there?
Yeah, yeah. And it is challenging. I know it'd also be challenging for listeners to hear, especially if they've had loss. But it was in 2006, and March 12th, 2006, on a Sunday after church. And an accident took the life of my son, and he was only 18 months and 3 days. I had just breastfed him a couple hours earlier, and it was like really our only son, the light of our life. And just it was so impactful to me. And I remember even just from when he was born, like I could see the world in his big old eyes. And this, it was devastating because in so many ways, the unexpected, the tragic, the worst pain, the heartache, the heartbreak, the grief and devastation and anger and frustration and guilt, and name every emotion, it was there. And it penetrated me, and it really broke me. I mean, so much so instantaneously. Physically, as I like intellectualize this now, is that I went from breastfeeding this beautiful boy to not ever having another drop of milk. And if any woman has breastfed that is listening, you know that if you miss a feeding by 10 minutes, your breasts are engorged. So going from breastfeeding to literally empty socks, my body completely shut down. Trauma is real, and the effects of trauma on the body, the unspeakable and really unknown, unless you've experienced it yourself, was trauma on trauma. And that shutdown of the physical body coincides with the emotions of grief, despair, and I remember, going back, waking up in the morning before I even opened my eyes and crying because how could I face this day? How could I possibly face this day? I remember wanting to die every single day, and being in this moment. And Megan, from there, my husband and I, we had two daughters, 6 and 9 at the time. And it was like, okay, well, let's try and have another child. I was 39 and never had an issue getting pregnant before, but now there was an issue. And I ended up with going through 6 rounds of infertility treatments with no response, no ovarian
Oh my
response.
gosh.
And so for anyone listening who's tried, and that negative pregnancy test over and over again, it's grief and grief and grief. It's mourning again and again and again. And that further spiraled me physically and physiologically into early menopause. And then being diagnosed with early menopause and told by my reproductive endocrinology colleague, the infertility specialist, that there's no chance of me conceiving. Could try egg donation, but that didn't look good either. So
Yeah.
it was devastating as an OB-GYN, as really a fertility specialist. That was my jam, helping women
Yeah.
conceive and have healthy pregnancies. And it was to find my doctor's bag empty, that broke me. And I knew that I couldn't keep living each day as if nothing had changed in my life, and my entire life had turned around. So I took a sabbatical from my practice, swear an angel was sent to cover my practice. Dr. Deborah Shepherd came and covered my practice for a year while we just kept the earth moving under our feet. And for me, travel has always been a meditation, and I have family around the world too. And we did a bunch of home exchanges and just traveled serendipitously. I met amazing traditional healers and opened my heart, opened my doctor's bag, and learned from some of the most amazing, non-medical, however, incredibly gifted healers from around the world. And result of that journey, I will say I went around the world to learn the Buddhist saying that everywhere you go, there you are. If anyone can relate to that, right? Like
Yes,
where you go,
absolutely.
there you are. And I literally went around the world to learn that statement, but I met some amazing healers. And one of the places, I mean, from a Native American shaman to an Indonesian medicine man and a Andean philosopher and some of the world's leading scientists in the world too. And it was very fascinating. I want to share the story about Indonesia though, because I just returned from my trip to Indonesia after being there 18 years ago. And I would love to share that story.
Yes, yes.
So
Share.
yeah, when I went to Bali, Indonesia, we were in Ubud. So, and we stayed in northern Ubud, so near the volcanic rock and beaches there. And we heard about this Indonesia. I'd heard about this Indonesian medicine man, and so it was very famous on the island. Probably the same one that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote about in Eat, Love, Pray. And before her, book, or before I'd read her book, and this was in 2000 and early 2007. And I sat with this healer, this old man. He was old at that time, Patak, his name was. And he was in an open courtyard, so the open courtyard, Bali style. And I was there, my husband at the time, and two of my daughters, 6 and 9. And he said, what are you, like, what brings you here? I said, well, I'm diagnosed with menopause. My ovaries failed. I'm infertile. And he put his hand on my head, Megan. So like our listeners can put their hand at the top of their head and feel. And I was like, okay, well, it was really, really tender. It was like a hot spot. It was so tender. And I was like, what is going on? And he said to me, he said, your ovaries are fine, but you worry too much. You worry too much. I'm like, wait, I'm a OB-GYN. I trained at Emory, one of the best institutions in the world. Like my ovaries are not fine. They are
Yeah.
shriveled almonds at this point. And
Trust me, I've talked to doctors. I am a doctor. I know these things.
right, I know. Like that is even a consideration that my ovaries are fine. That was out of my scope of understanding. And yet somewhere his message lit a spark in me. It lit a spark of hope, a spark of something, because a few months later I was pregnant. A few months
What?
later I was pregnant. Yes. And so that just blew my mind, because again, at 39, early menopause, infertility, 6
Yeah.
rounds to naturally conceive. And it was really, that just, and at that point, 40 years old. And so it really blew my mind. And I literally came back into medical practice on fire to help women. Like, your diagnosis is not your destiny. The body has tremendous capacity to heal itself. Stress is certainly our biggest hormone disruptor and leads us into complete physical shutdown. But with the right nutrients, the right mindset, the right lifestyle, you can reverse that, give your body the opportunity to heal. And one of the biggest gifts was that spark of hope and that challenge to me that said, okay, your diagnosis is not your destiny. This is, your ovaries have a tremendous amount of recovery in them. And that just changed everything. And I was just in Ubud now, 18 years later, quite different, because you mentioned, like, there's another spiral in my life. And I was near broke at one point, literally didn't know how I was going to pay the electric bill, literally didn't know. Like, I remember when the guy for our water services came to the house, and he's like, wait, I'm here to shut off your water, but
No.
yeah, like, because I had to pay the water bill. I mean, I had no capacity. That was in, like, I don't remember, 2014 or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
2013. And he said, but you took care of my wife. So I'm going to say there's a dog in the yard, and I wasn't able to come to do it. And, just like, that was a beautiful moment. But that devastation. So to go back to Bali now, to be actually paid to go there, be flown first class, staying in one of the top resorts in the world, to be able to teach what I know. And then realize 18 years ago when I was there, I was broken. I was depressed, suicidal even. And looking at that point in time, 18 years to where I am now, what a change has happened in my life. And, to be leading my legacy, to teaching others who, what I've learned and empowering them on their journey, teaching the teachers and the physicians and coaches and to teaching individuals to be the CEO of their body, to be empowered in their body, not to give their power away to any diagnosis, any prescription, any, media influencer, what, news outlet that wants to
Mhm.
tell us we're broken, because
Yes.
it's never the case. It's never the case.
No, I can relate to that infertility piece. We had 2 children, and then I had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage, and so, of course, go to the doctor, like, "Run some tests, like, what is happening?" I had no problem before, and they told me that I had, a really bad case of endometriosis. That was my diagnosis, and that I would not be able to have children again. I would just continue to have miscarriages, and at the time, I was in an incredibly stressful job and was just I mean, I was killing my body with the amount of stress that I was allowing it to have on my mind and on my body. And I decided like I can't do this anymore. I can't do this for the 2 children that I do have. I can't do this to myself, to my husband, and quit that job and got pregnant.
Yeah.
Had
Amazing.
2 more amazing children. And again, like my diagnosis wasn't my destiny. And when I look at the root of my problem, it had nothing to do with me being a woman being infertile. It was just the stress. It was my environment. It was what I was doing at the time. And that was amazing. I mean, I don't know how many children I could have had, right? But they told me like, absolutely, you cannot have more. And I was like, I'm not convinced of that, but I am convinced that the way I'm living my life right now is not helping anybody. And that changed everything. I wish somebody had come and touched my head, right? I wonder if it was
Yeah.
tender with all my stress and worry. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, and I think about that. Why, I was thinking about that even again recently, thinking, okay, how did that hot spot on my head? Because it's not there anymore, right?
Yeah,
Not there anymore. But you think that HPA axis, right? The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, like on fire with your amygdala in survival mode, like
yeah,
on fire because you're just in this survival mode, and how that affects this chakra, or
yeah,
this energetic center
yeah.
of our body. And it's like, okay, well, I'm in high alert here. I don't have time to be sacral.
Right, right. Ladies, touch your head. See if it's sensitive, if it's hot. If so, we got to make some changes, ladies.
We're
We got to
making
make some
changes.
changes. Yeah. I love that story. And thank you for being so vulnerable and being willing to share. There were a few things that really stuck out to me how grief, even while it can be incredibly paralyzing and just so devastating, can also be a teacher if we let it, right? If we let that be our guide. And something that I say a lot, and this isn't the first time this message has come through even in this show, is so often we, especially as women, trying to be strong, trying to hold all together, we just push through. And yet sometimes we just need to pause and let ourselves break open and see, let that grief out, let us experience it and see what else is out there for us to soak in. And I feel like you really did that. What a brave step you took in saying, I'm going to pause, have that wonderful doctor take over your practice, and just travel and get exactly what your soul, your body, your mind needed. You wouldn't be where you are today if you hadn't have taken that pause.
No,
So
no. And I believe there is absolute magic in the pauses of our life.
absolutely. Absolutely. Even the little ones, right? Even just the time to respond instead of react to something, those little tiny, tiny moments. Well, you had mentioned, and I had mentioned earlier that you had 2 kind of devastating parts, right? Little setbacks, if you will, not little, massive ones in your life. So you came back home, you reopened your practice, like you said, on fire, right? Poured yourself into serving again. And then you had mentioned with electricity and the water, I mean, you were near broke, just a different kind of crash than before, but that burnout, financial collapse, hormone chaos. So, what was it like then to find yourself, the expert, right? Literally the doctor, suddenly living in that sense of struggle again for a totally different reason?
Yeah, poverty. And like, wait, that whole that identity crisis from, from everything that had happened and with trauma. And this is something I hadn't recognized till that second real crisis was the PTSD under the surface. Because like many women listening, I was just powering through. I was just powering through. I was running my clinic. I was, had my clinic, my med spa, I had, 2 offices I was serving. And then I completely, the PTSD under the surface, because I was only sleeping 3 hours a week, checking in on my other children, that PTSD, that trauma, that fear-based physiology was under the surface. And that's when I burn out from the practice that I love, the marriage that I knew I loved my husband, but I didn't feel that love anymore. And burnout from the marriage, got divorced, all financial responsibility was mine. And, and it was this PTSD under the surface that was still eating at my physiology, breaking me down cell by cell by cell. And when I did break down too, my patients were like, Dr. Anna, no one will give us your potions, lotions, and creams that, really help them, because I compounded their hormones, I customized their regimens, and had been doing all of that. So I had committed to creating something that was even better than anything I could write on a prescription pad to help with feminine health and sexual health. That was better than anything I could write on a prescription. And I did, and I poured my money into that. And, and I kept on holding on to my clinic for as long as I could. But, when you're not, when your expenses are the same, but your income goes away, you quickly lose all your reserves. And that's what had happened to me. And then I had invested into the creation of my product called Julva, which is my feminine cream for women. And so I remember, so much during that time. And then it's where I learned the physiology of disconnect, the physiology of burnout, the cortisol, oxytocin connection, or disconnection, more likely to say, is that when we're under that chronic stress for so long, that cortisol's there on the surface. You've got your cortisol gas pedal floored. And when cortisol goes up, oxytocin, the hormone of connection, joy, rebuilding, restoration, rejuvenation, completely goes down. And then your body gets into this very dangerous physical state that cortisol is low and oxytocin is low at the same time. And that is the physiology of disconnect. That is the physiology of, I love my work, but I can't do it anymore. I used to love it, and now I have no desire anymore to do it. I love my partner. I don't feel love for them. And that physiology of burnout, physiology of divorce, disconnect, depression, even to the degree of suicidal ideations. I mean, it's there in our physiology. Our physiology affects our behavior. And so that was all part of that. And with that, at that age 48, at that time, 47, 48, I was in full-blown perimenopause. Again, as much as I had my hormones dialed in, as a hormone expert, it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. And that's and that's when I really started, to go back though to that time. I mean, not that long ago, 2017, it had gone on for a few years. And in 2017, I remember I was Airbnb-ing my home and taking the kids camping because I needed to make the mortgage payment. So I'm like, okay, kids, we're going camping. And that was to Airbnb my home. I mean, that's not that long ago to now running a nearly 8-figure business. And so what a shift, right? And during menopause, that's when I dug into, okay, what's going on here? Because hormones are dialed in. What else is happening? And that led me to create what I teach about in my Magic Menopause programs. It's my keto green method, this concept of shifting our physiology out of its stress state into a rebuilt state, and empowering our hormones through bumping into ketosis and giving them the opportunity to heal themselves in this alkaline environment. And that shift with me from being very discombobulated of a single mom, of a wee one in elementary school, a middle schooler, and a high schooler, and all girls, y'all. So if you are girl moms,
oh my,
yes, if you're girl moms and you've been through their teenage years, to going not being able to get kids to school on time, late for the bus, taking them to driving them all to their respective schools. And I'm like, all right, we're already late. Let's stop for coffee on the way. I mean, it was really discombobulated to when I healed this physiology really quickly in this method. As I dug in, I needed to understand what else was happening here and how do I shift that? And a big part was simply checking my physiology, checking urine pH, and realizing it was as acidic as the pH paper read. I was literally peeing acid. That for me was an aha moment, because if you're in that state, you're breaking down your muscle, your bone, your brain. You know, I had horrible hair loss at that point. I mean, hair loss to here, you can see I've got a great full head of hair now. So anyone
Mhm.
who's struggling, it's reversible, y'all. It's reversible. And so that led me into really creating this keto green method that I teach to empower our physiology, because it does. It takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. And that led me, I finished launching my product, Jolva, and brought it to market. I've since published 3 best-selling books, and I'm working on my 4th. And, I'm really, really that living through those experiences helps me see our power as women and this cathedral of our souls, this cathedral, they say the temple of our spirit, really the cathedral of our spirit, cathedral of our souls needs constant renovation and repair. And it's within our power to do this. And I've seen so many, especially over the decades of my medical practice, over 30 years now, that women are just, have been taught and trained to give their power away. And
100%. Yes.
it's within us, and we are so powerful, and we can rebuild even with the worst diagnoses. There's so much rebuilding and restoration and repair that we can do.
You're listening to another episode of Empowered and Unstoppable. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Are you ready to take your success to the next level? Visit www.meganbunnellcoaching.com. I love that. And, there's a lot of humility in going through something like a massive financial crisis. And again, yet what a great teaching moment, and causing you to dive deep and really build on that integrative medicine that you have now. I think it's so common. First, I think now in our culture to have a diagnosis for everything, right? Something seems a little bit off, and it's like we need to know what that's called. And then there's instantly some sort of medicine that's going to solve that symptom or symptoms, right? But then those medications cause more symptoms that now, we're taking medication for, instead of looking down deep at what that root causes. And I'm definitely a closet science nerd to the max. I mean, I love that, but I love that you're like, this really isn't a hormone issue. I mean, it is, right? That's your symptom, but there's another way to fix it besides fixing your hormones. And you're right. I mean, back to the diagnosis is not your destiny. Let's figure that out. We do have power. We have the power to control, to update the cathedral of our body, right? To make sure that we are giving it the care that it needs. Because our biochemistry isn't our enemy. It's really our messenger, right? And so when we nurture not just our oxytocin, but when we nurture the things that allow oxytocin to be in a healthy level in our body through connection and laughter and purpose and feeding us what we need, we're not just balancing those hormones, we're really balancing our humanity, right? Like the person that we are. I love that. I love that so much. I think a lot of the women that are listening, I know that they are incredibly high achieving women. They're building businesses, have businesses, raising families just like you, holding it all together, and yet they feel drained, right? Kind of going back to what you were talking about. What kind of practical shifts can we make to begin balancing those hormones in a natural way, and even our lives, even if we're not in the middle of chaos, even if we're not in the middle of a setback? What are some practical things that we can do?
Yeah. So at first is what gets measured gets managed. Right. And so like that is the first step. You go to a doctor's office and we ask you a bunch of questions and we do some baseline testing and labs, and that's part of it. So those inventories, those questionnaires that we say in medicine, 90% of a diagnosis or understanding of what the patient is going through is through their history and physical exam. And that is so critically important, especially with so much telemedicine and people not getting that good clinical physical exam. Then
Mhm.
checking something that I tell my clients, like check your urine pH. Check your urine pH first and foremost, because that's telling you what's happening. It's different than blood pH. Blood pH stays really stable until we're in super crisis. But urine pH is affected by cortisol, and it's affected by our nourishment, our nourishment to
Yes.
our bodies and the food we're eating and how we're eating and the mindset in which we're eating it. But cortisol, that stress hormone, creates that acidic response, and that it actually increases hydrogen ion secretion across the renal tubules of the kidneys. And so we get a bladder full of acidic urine, which long-term for women can lead to infections, incontinence, urgency symptoms. I mean, that's disrupting for life. You just have to think, okay, this has got to be a problem. Why isn't everyone being told to measure this? So urine pH is a big deal, because it's not just talking about, okay, is the food we eating decreasing inflammation in our body? And is our mindset, even with the best diets, is our mindset, is our stress level, is how we're absorbing that, working for us or working against it? Because where cortisol is the most acidifying, oxytocin is the most alkalinizing. It's the most rebuilding, it's restorative, and it's a hormone of life, right? It's a hormone of pregnancy, labor, and delivery. It's a hormone of orgasm, connection, love, and laughter. And it's the most alkalinizing, rebuilding. And it's one of the common threads, these oxytocin increasing practices, that's a common thread in the blue zones. When we look at the oldest living populations in the world, these community faith practices, good relationships, friendships, being out in nature, these are all things that increase oxytocin. It's better than anything I can write on a prescription pad. And so measuring, first of all, checking that urine pH. And the second thing, especially from age 35 to 55, because our brain starts starving for fuel with the decline in progesterone and estrogen, it's because the brain's ability to use glucose for fuel, or gluconeogenesis in the brain, is hormone dependent. We know it's estrogen, but most likely progesterone dependent too. So it starts starving for fuel, and the symptoms that we experience are neuroendocrine symptoms. And this is this period of neuroendocrine vulnerability. What that looks like is you have the endocrine issues, the GYN issues, like the irregular cycles, breakthrough bleeding, the heavier than normal periods, ovarian cyst forming, and the PMS. So the PMS is part of that anxiety, depression before your menstrual cycle, and the loss of libido, the brain fog, the mood, those mood swings,
yes, all of that.
those, right?
Yeah.
All of that. And those are the neurologic symptoms. So the connection between our hormones and our neurotransmitters is real. And so I realized that when we shift into ketosis, that is not a hormone, and this is different than a keto diet. I'm not advocating a keto diet. I say it's a keto green plan, because we want to empower our body to get into ketosis. And by doing that, we bypass the hormone dependent aspect in our nervous system. And the use of ketones for fuel in the brain is not hormone dependent. And more than 90% of those symptoms can go away in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, that lit me up. That was like that biggest revelation for me was huge. And that's how I ended up like, okay, this is working for me. And I called it my keto green method. So with intermittent fasting, cutting out the carbs, but using the alkalinizing, low carbohydrate, cruciferous, and vegetables, fermented foods, and sprouts, incorporating a heavy dose of those, and really high quality protein, healthy fats, because our hormones are derived from fats. We got to get at the precursors, and the intermittent fasting, getting into that ketosis in a healthy way was game changing. And that's how I built my keto green program. I was like, it was 2014. And I remember calling my most difficult patients that I'd had in my practice and saying, okay, I think I have something that's really going to work. And literally, we would meet in my living room, every week for 8 weeks, and I built the program for them as I went through it, and it helped every single one of them like quickly. And so that's how I ended up bringing my Magic Menopause program online, which is then how agent in New York found me and said she needed a menopause book, and that's how I published my book, The Hormone Fix, in 2018. And all of that, I think realizing my purpose, my mission to empower other women to feel at home in their body, a body they love. And that's
I love that.
for them. Mhm.
Well, and thank you for all of that work and putting that all together. And this is where I think I want everybody listening to just take a really deep, slow breath and exhale slowly. You don't have to overhaul your whole life, right? It's sometimes it's just balance with one tiny little step at a time. We can all get our levels checked. We can check our urine pH. That's easy. That's super easy, right? And if somebody is giving us a plan for what we need to put in our bodies and when we need to put it in our bodies, and it's that simple, and in 2 weeks, we could notice a massive difference, that's easy, right? That's something that's easy without overhauling everything. And I'm sure there's more, like making sure they get enough sleep and hydrating and saying no to those things that don't serve you. But what a practical way to make a big difference very quickly. I
Yes.
love that.
Yes. And
Thank
it's
you.
that just one next right step at a time.
Yes. Well, and I love that you brought up menopause because I think that that is something that honestly plagues a lot of listeners. Either they're afraid of it, they're going through it, they're on the other side of it, and it didn't go well for them, right? Um, I think maybe just that whole process is very stressful for people and just a big black box of unknown for most of us. But you've said something that I absolutely love, which is that menopause isn't the end of our story. It's just the next chapter. So, for those women that are listening who feel like maybe her very best years are behind her, right? I'm sure many of us have felt that way. What do you want her to know?
Yeah, but I will tell you that, that menopause, the time after menopause can be the most glorious time of our life. It is our enchantress season. It
Yes.
absolutely is. And I think too, for women who are well past menopause, even if they were asymptomatic through it, they're seeing other women their age or older just struggling with
Yes.
diagnoses. And women have a significantly more number of prescriptions than men, and that's not the answer. And it's so, menopause is really an empowerment stage. And menopause is natural and mandatory. Suffering is optional. And remembering that piece that we don't have to just power through, that every symptom we're experiencing is a sign of an underlying issue that's going on. And it's often about less, not more that we have to
Yes.
do, right? It's about less, not more. And that pause, that magic in the pause of our lives. The Japanese use the term konenki for the stage of a woman's life, and it means literally the second spring. The second spring.
Oh, I love it. And what did you call it? The Enchantress?
Enchantress
I
of our
love
lives.
that.
Yep.
Well, and it's so true because when you get through menopause, obviously age goes with that. And that just means you have more wisdom, more confidence, more truth just from your experiences in life. Um, I love that. I'm going to start using Enchantress. I love that so much.
Stage. I love it too. And I'm in my 60th revolution around the sun right now. So I celebrated 59 years. So I'm in my 60th revolution. I think, okay, well, if God gives us 120 years, boy, how do I want to use them? I really want to
Yes.
use my gifts and create a legacy of really empowered women and tight communities of women that are, in this state of self-compassion and love and contribution.
Yes. No, absolutely. Well, and you certainly are creating your legacy right now. Um, I love so much that your products are coming from somebody that has a medical background that really understands women in specific incredibly well. So, if somebody is interested in taking those simple steps, I know that you have a lot to offer, and maybe you could just help us decide what it is that we're looking for. Where do we find those things? If we just want more of you, where is it that we can find more of your fabulous Dr. Anna wisdom and solutions to these problems that plague us all?
Yeah, definitely. My website's a wealth of information at dranna.com. And my book, especially I would say start with my book, The Hormone Fix. I'm here. My book, The Hormone Fix, because I do write about my journey. And again, it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. So this is an excellent place to start. And men should read this book too, because every man that reads it's like, oh my God, thank you. Because now I understand so much more. And
Now
they
I get it.
now I get it. And they follow along right with you. They become your best support. And so they're starting with the hormone fix is really important because there's medicinal menus, 10-day hormone detox in there. Because again, there's so much that's disrupting our hormones whether we're taking them or our body's producing them. So that's affecting our body's glandular production and ability to use and detox from our hormones that make a difference. So being aware of that. Of course, the stress, cortisol and oxytocin piece is so powerful. So really tapping into the things that we can do to increase our oxytocin make the biggest difference. And then following through, the products I created were because my doctor's bag was empty and I didn't have anything that I could use or that was working or that I could recommend. And so my, foundational product that I recommend to everyone is my Mighty Maca, which is 30 superfoods, Mighty Maca Plus. It's 30 superfoods. And that came from experiencing different healing foods around the world that I put together that helped my body restore itself. Like, was part of the key nutrients and, polyphenols and adaptogens that really helped my body. And that was the first piece that I created. And then my Julva cream and my balance cream, those are beautiful and supportive and clean and preventative from so much that we go through. So foundationally, those are some of the core products that I created. And then, of course, I created it in a done for you, a magic menopause program that is 8 weeks, step by step, because it takes time to make these changes and to really, flow into the supportive disciplines and practices that make a difference in the quality of our life and our relationships.
I love that. And that link for all of you for her books, for her website, for all of this will be in the show notes. So please do start with a book. That's a great thing. And then see what kind of products, like she said, they're not out there. They're not something that she can write on a prescription pad or she would have just stopped there. And so thank you for really being innovative and creating those solutions for us. And I know that your website has a ton of information about each of those products and what they can be used for and how they're going to benefit. So I love that. Is there anything else that you can think of that you want to share with these wonderful women that are listening that I'm sure can relate to so much of this?
Yeah, I definitely think in my whole business model that I've created has been from a work of love and also what helped me. I think from the business perspective is that, when you see a need and, and you're able to create that solution to be able to share it widely, that's a gift that keeps giving. And for me, that's what drives me and what I do. And realizing that, gosh, 2017, that wasn't that long ago.
No.
It was really, really literally camping. So this, change can happen quickly. And I think tapping into that, trusting yourself, trusting your intuition. Women, that's our gift. That is our gift. Our intuition is our greatest gift. And we feel that something that we're doing is not in alignment with that, like with your story, Megan, that you okay, this is not supporting me. And you were able to say, okay, I'm quitting this. I'm able to let this go and tap into something I really love doing. And then we do love what we do. And that's oxytocin. So that just keeps feeding the potential that we have and the passions we have. And we're never too old. We're never too old, never too young to start, never too old.
Yes, but we are always in the wrong place when it's not in alignment. And there is something that is in alignment. And I think so many people get stuck on, I don't exactly know what my purpose is. I don't know exactly what it is I'm supposed to do. But you do know what you're not supposed to do because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel in alignment. And sometimes I think life hits us over the head to show us, with things that are incredibly difficult to go through. And I think that's just another sign, like then you're not doing what you're meant to do. You're not in alignment with what's going to give you that oxytocin. You're just living in that cortisol life, and that's not doing anybody any favors. Well, I always end with this. If you were magical and you had the ability to put a sticky note on every woman's mirror that's going to magically appear in the morning and they could read it, what would that say?
Self-love is your highest frequency. Self-love is your highest frequency. And so much we, hate our body, we hate our hair, we hate our smile lines or laugh lines. I don't like to call them wrinkles. We, hate certain aspects of ourselves. And that's an enemy that you're working with. And you can't work with an enemy. So like there's so much to love about each and every one of us, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so much to love, and tapping into that is powerful. So self-love is your highest frequency. And as a mom, recognizing when I was struggling, trying to make sure my kids were okay and, bills were paid and, pedal to the metal lifestyle, that it wasn't until I did put that pause in my life and I focused on my healing that my energy became magnetic and radiant, and my kids were better. So going from that, discombobulated, can't get my kids to school on time, to all of a sudden they're like down, ready for school, breakfast is made, and kissing me on their way out the door with an "I love you, mom." Like, how did that happen? Because nothing externally changed, but I changed. I
Mm-hmm.
changed. I radiated that positivity. I had that peace that surpassed all understanding within me. And that shift helps our family and
Yes.
everything we touch. And that's what creates that magnetism of the dreams in your life. And for those that are like, I don't know my purpose, you have many purposes. We each have many purposes, and you follow what you like, what you enjoy doing, what brings a smile to your face.
Yes.
That's it right there.
Yes, I love that. And I love that reminder. That's really what Empowered and Unstoppable is all about, is you change. And when you change, the world around you changes, but you don't have to change other people. It will happen when you are true to you and you're feeling that love. I love that. Self-love is the highest frequency. There's actually a scientific study on that. Did you know that? Is that where you got that from?
No, tell me.
I'm going to send it to you because off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was, but essentially they put people in a room and measured frequency. And so they would give them prompts to make them feel anger, happiness, love, self love, whatever, and truly recorded the frequencies. And self love was the highest frequency. Like there's
That's
scientific
beautiful.
proof to that. So I love that. So I'm going to send you the link. In fact, I'll put it in the show notes for all of you that want to read about it too. Um, but yeah, I adore that. And sometimes it just takes that one sentence of truth to really pull us back when the world gets loud. So, ladies, if this is your first episode, get a sticky note and put it on your mirror. I know mine are full of all of these one sentence truths, and it makes a difference in the morning when we're reminded of that. And I go back to them all the time. They are incredibly helpful. So, today's is self love is your highest frequency. Well, Dr. Anna, has been such a pleasure having you here with us today. And I know that I definitely could use some more of the girlfriend doctor in my world. So I know I'm going to your website. Ladies, do the same. Get her book. I've actually read it and it is amazing. And I actually hadn't thought about sending it to my husband to read. I think I'm going to wrap it up for our anniversary and say, here's how you're going to
You will
understand
love
me
it.
just a little more. I love it. So if you need any of that, you want any of that, they'll be in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for being here, for your heart and your story, and for reminding us that our hardest chapters don't define us, but they refine us, and that we are capable. We are incredibly powerful. Being a woman is incredible. Truly. And it can be incredibly hard as well. And a business owner, even twice that, right? I mean, that just amplifies it. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with us that there's highs and there's lows, but there's always a way. And that we have an answer. You have a solution to so many of those symptoms that we're experiencing as women. And just for being a phenomenal model to all of us, all the golden nuggets that you shared, the stories that you shared, it really has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, remember that you were never meant to dim your light to survive. You were really meant to rise and rebuild and sparkle. So if you found this episode with Dr. Anna inspiring and helpful, please subscribe, share it with other women. We all need to hear this. We all need the solutions and the wisdom that she's provided us. So don't forget to follow her, get her book, go check out her product, see if that's maybe the solution that you've been waiting for. Until next time, keep showing up in your 10 out of 10 life, because empowered women don't wait for permission. We truly do create transformation. So I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Empowered and Unstoppable. If today's episode spoke to you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who needs a boost of empowerment. Are you ready to take your success to the next level? Visit www.meganbunnellcoaching.com. Remember, you're not just capable, you're unstoppable. See you next time.